These guys out.
Soliciting or hearing comments from the public at this meeting. I would like to welcome Jerry Winsley, who's going to shortly make a presentation on the survey that you all had input in and commented on earlier, and it was completed as promised before today's meeting. We have a few other matters on the agenda as well that are going to take some time, so I don't really want to spend much time at this point. I will move right to the second item on the agenda, which is the approval of the minutes from our last meeting, and I will entertain a motion in a second. Have you had a chance to review the minutes? Is there any discussion on that? All right, after that lengthy discussion, are all those in favor of approving? No one has the minutes. You were to pick up the minutes on your way in.
There you go, I can follow.
Oh, okay, but
I don't see the minutes, I got it.
oh. These were the minutes that were posted on the website. I'm sure you all read them carefully. I'll reopen the matter if there's a problem that's preliminary on these items and move on. All those in favor of approving the minutes? Aye. Opposed? The minutes are approved. All right, moving quickly to the next item on the agenda. We have here today Jerry Winsley, who has completed the survey and is ready to report.
Great. Well, thank you very much for your time. I probably will take about 40 minutes of your time to convey the results to you. Please, if you have any questions as we go along, go ahead and ask them. I think the best way to begin is to reintroduce everyone to what it is that you asked us to accomplish on your behalf first.
Excuse me, is this going to be something in hard copy we're going to be able to get?
I have some handouts on cross-tabulations and some key driver analysis that I'll hand out towards the end when I start to go over that.
We don't need to take notes.
You don't need to take notes. And then you'll have an option of getting a copy of the report or an electronic copy of the report, but it's all ready to go.
Thank you.
So no notes necessary. And then what I'll do is talk a little bit about the methodology so that we're reminded also of how we went about getting this done for you and some of the statistics behind it too. And then launch right into a summary of finding intermixed with some of the highlights that we thought were interesting as well. And then I'll repeat what we'll leave behind for you. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. Reminder that this was considered to be a satisfaction survey. It was designed to collect user input on satisfaction, awareness, expectations, strengths, and areas for improvement. The research study included a comprehensive telephone survey. Interviews were conducted with residents of Connecticut. We worked with the Commission and with staff on the creation of the survey instrument. The calls were made between November 19th and the 24th. All surveys resemble books in a way in that they have chapters, and these happen to be the chapters within your survey instrument. Awareness of the court system, we had questions surrounding that. history with the court, perceptions of the court's strengths and areas needing improvement, expectations, an important area, rating the court process and treatment, rating the court system operations, rating court personnel, perceptions of translators, perceptions of the notices that are sent out, and also perceptions of the website if they had access to the website as well. There was a small section in there just for jurors, a few questions, and we asked them to rate a number of characteristics of the court system too. And then we collected a small number of demographic data points too, so that we can make some observations by way of cross tabulations. And we can fill this room with cross tabs. So that's something that while you're looking at this, you might think that would be nice to have if it's something that I don't present. And through Melissa's office, you can request additional cross tabulations as well. So, as far as methodology goes, you'll recall probably that we did 500 interviews, 500 completed interviews with users of the court system. We received the names and the addresses from the court system. And remember, the areas or the different case types were criminal, motor vehicle, civil, small claims, family, juvenile, housing, and jurors. We had the names and the addresses. We sent them off to Survey Sample Incorporated, and they did reverse lookup for us, and then they appended for us the phone numbers so that we can begin making the calls. Again, dates, November 19th through the 24th. We made our calls 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. On weekends, it was 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Again, you helped greatly in creating the survey instrument. This is just a reminder that all of the scales that you see within the survey instrument are balanced, so that you've all seen scales in the newspapers when they report out polls that are unbalanced. So we make sure that either numeric or verbal scales are all balanced, so nothing can be criticized from that standpoint too. Placement of questions many times is important, so we watch over that as well. Population-based surveys, we strive to do them fairly proportional to population contribution. So we sat together and tried to decide of those different 8 categories, such as civil and family and juvenile, what percentage of the sample size should come from each of those categories so that they're relatively reflective of your total user base. And so we did that as well. Once we did, we received the sample, we created an event name, somewhat stratified process of sampling through that list for qualified residents. They had to have confirmed with us that they had experience with the court system before we proceeded and went on with the survey. We also reminded them, in case they had other court experiences, and many of them did have other court experiences, that we were not talking about any experience within the federal or probate courts. Training of our folks on the survey, specific to the survey, occurred on 16th. Everything that was done except the lookup of the phone numbers and attaching them to the name and address was done in-house at our offices. We had a 72% completion rate, which is pretty high. Of all the folks that we got in touch with, 72% went on to complete the survey with us. So that's usually an indication that people have an interest in providing input. We don't give folks in this country much of an opportunity to provide input on things that they're pretty close to on a regular basis. So we heard it from them. 500 surveys, plus or minus 4.5% at a 95% confidence level. If you remember your statistics course, 101, if you say, Jerry, you don't like these results, go do them 100 more times. We go out and do them 100 more times, and 95 out of 100 times we'll come back to you with results that are within plus or minus 4.5% of the results that you're about to see. So please don't ask us to do this 100 more times. Okay, any questions on methodology? Yes, ma'am.
The week that you did the surveys was the week of the holiday. How did that impact the work?
Holidays for us are usually actually easier. Our end-of-year surveys are on holidays. People are home, they're reachable, they're more relaxed, some are on vacation. So for us, it's not really a factor when you're, you folks in this room are busy folks. But, it's actually a pretty good time for us to be making calls. So The end of the year for us is a pretty good time. We get a lot done in December. We wouldn't have had. Sure. Yeah. Any other methodology questions? Okay. All right, so let me start with highlights. A satisfaction index. Some of you may be familiar with customer satisfaction indexes in the corporate world. This is when you'll, for a utility, let me give you an example. A utility may do overall company ratings as one set of characteristics. Then they may have their field reps rated, and then they may have their office or customer service or the call center staff rated. So they take those three different categories of ratings and they ascribe a particular weight to them. Many of them simply a third, and a third. And they come up with an annual or every 6 months customer satisfaction index number. What we did for you is you had similar categories. So you had only 2 characteristics under treatment, which we're going to come to. But the average for that positive rating was 80.9%. Then you had a series, I think it was 9 different characteristics that we had respondents rate under systems or operations type characteristics. And the average positive rating was 80.9. And then on personnel is always a little bit higher. It was 83.2%. So we took those 3 and assigned equal weight to those because of all 3 in our view is important. And what we came up with then, well, here they are again, is an 81.7% satisfaction index. So if you were ever again to replicate this survey using similar questions, what you'd be doing is trying to measure against this and trying to move that number up. Not bad, actually. 81.9 customer satisfaction or satisfaction ratings for us can range from 40 right up to about 90, 92. I think is the highest I have ever seen. I don't think it ever can get past 92. But most corporations will tell you that they strive for high 80s for satisfaction ratings. So not a bad number to at a point where you're beginning measurement. On awareness, a large majority, 84.7% of all respondents suggested they were very or somewhat familiar with the courts. We did this mostly to be able to cross-tab a lot of folks that say they're very familiar or unfamiliar on some of their ratings too. So it's a good indication. If they're more familiar, do they have higher ratings? If they're less familiar, do they have lower ratings? So that's where we were going with this particular question. On court history, 26.9% suggested they initiated the most recent court experience. 71.9% said the experience was initiated by another party, and 1.2% were not sure.
That includes jurors, right?
Yes. This is composite data, all 500 right now on jurors. Soon you'll see specific questions that only the jurors can answer. Nearly 2/5, 37%, said that they were represented by an attorney. On average, respondents told us they made 2.91 visits during their most recent case or experience to the court. On strengths or areas of improvement in declining order. In an open-end format question, we asked folks to tell us what strengths of the system were. In declining order, the most frequently perceived strengths included good system, efficient, organized, polite, good communication, did the best they could, knowledgeable personnel, very thorough, security was tight, treated good or fair, and probation officers were accountable. And what I'd like to do is just read some of those. I probably won't read all of them for time, but some of those that fell below that 3.2, so you have an idea of what followed. Safe, if not needed, can leave quickly. Good judges, fair jury selection, marshals were good, more organization for jurors, access to lawyers, judged by peers, location, proximity to home, comfortable area for jurors, access to TV, PC, good public defender, deal with crazy people, arbitration, saves time, was resolved quickly, video was helpful, volunteers, judge was very fair, internet made everything easier, drug alternative programs, legal justice, settled out of court, and so forth and so on. But many of those are just one person mentioning those. But that just gives you a flavor of what the remainder were. But of course, your focus should be on those that are most frequently named. Okay, declining order, the most frequently named areas for improvement. Improve the wait time, number one. More expedient, better court system, lack of communication, too much time between cases, need fair process, prosecutors should listen more programs for children, and need to explain things better. Now you're beginning to see the ones that fell at the top had a lot to do with time. So eventually you're going to see us break this up a little bit more. But here they are, all the way down again to 3%. And we had, on both strengths and weaknesses, we had almost 60 different things mentioned. So let me do the same as I did before. Let me read to you a few of the ones that fell below the 3.0. Too much waiting should not be involved. Jurors waiting room too small, uncomfortable temps, cold, restrooms need updating, no water, more educated jurors, better sentencing, better tentative laws.
That's 55 is 55. Is that 55?
Better directions, more alert judges, attorneys taking advantage, better track of jurors on breaks, tell jurors no pocketbooks, more access to TV PCs, better parking, wider jury pool, better screening, could not hear the judge, unfair to landlords, and so forth and so on. So again, a little bit of a flavor. Now, the expectation section. Same thing, open-ended format question. People could say whatever they wanted to. In declining order, the most frequently cited expectations included fairness, expedient, justice should be served, efficiency, helpful, effective communication with court personnel, honesty, process quickly, do the job, treat everyone the same, and organization. Here they are on the table. But look at fairness. You didn't see those numbers under strengths and weaknesses. Fairness at 36%. So what did we do? We had 60 some expectations. What we did is we scanned through the list, and almost every one of them fit into 4 different categories. General, treatment, speed, the quality of the process, and logistics, such as parking, and so forth. So 59 different expectations presented by the respondents fit fairly neatly. They said different things, but they all fit somewhat into these categories. The majority of respondents, 83.1%, with the don't know respondents removed from the data, suggested their most recent court experience met their expectations always, most of the time, or some of the time. Here's a pie depicting the same. And again, if you look at the cumulative total for always, most of the time, or sometimes, you can look at it that way and come up with 83. Some folks will just focus on always and most of the time. Some will look at the seldom and never, but it's all in our report to you. On rating the court, remember the 3 sections. Now we're at the first of those 3 sections of categories. This is on treatment. The average overall positive rating for 2 different characteristics measured, treating you fairly and being open and honest, was 80.9%. So again, not bad, not bad. The next section, the overall average positive rating for 8, I said earlier it was 9, but 8 different characteristics measured, it was 80.9%. The highest ratings were reported for the building is easy to get around in. So logistically, they can get around in the building. 90%. Having convenient hours, 86.6%. The lowest positive rating, but still not bad. The lowest positive ratings were recorded for operating efficiently, 72.4%, operating effectively, 76%, having sufficient staff, 76.3%. And here we go. These again, on that scale of 1 to 10, these are the cumulative totals for ratings 1 through 4.
Jerry, do we know what courthouses they went to?
We know, we asked them what cities they went to. So you have to be a little careful there because there's so many. And if you start trying to get a rating, what you could do, because of your earlier question about cross-tabulations, we could take a look at that building is easy to get around in and run it by every location. So you can go, and we can prioritize that list of your locations on which ones are they saying are easy to get around in, all the way down to the lowest. So that's possible. Keeping in mind, again, you're dividing a 500 sample into 30 locations maybe. A large majority, 95.5%, suggested they felt Baird at 72.8% or somewhat safe at 22.8% during their respective court experiences. We never see this. We always see the reverse. It would usually be Baird at 22.8% and somewhat at 72.8%. So that's unusual. That means these folks aren't kidding when they say they feel safe. Moving to that third area, court personnel. The average overall positive rating for court personnel was 83%, 83.2%. The two highest positive ratings recorded were courtesy of marshals. In the world of corporate customer satisfaction, the two categories that you want to be really high all the time, one is courtesy, and the other one is helpfulness. So having courtesy come out here as one of the top is important. It's good because if you lose on courtesy, you've lost them completely. And then the two lowest positive ratings were reported for court staff being good listeners at 79%, on helping you understand the process at 80.5%. So the lowest, but they're still not too bad. And what do you do with this? Eventually you show the court personnel their ratings, congratulate them, and say, over time we'd like to move these to the high 80s. And here they are again. Patiently explaining things to your satisfaction, 80.7%. Responsiveness, 82.9%. Friendliness, 84.7%. Overall, 81.8% suggested they were very or somewhat satisfied with their recent court experience. That's the cumulative total of the blue and the red. So we had a few overall questions in there. One was, did they meet your expectations? And then this one. This is overall experience. What was it? And that 80%, 81.3%. Some respondents, 5.8%, indicated they felt discriminated against based on race, ethnicity, gender, age, or disability. No respondent mentioned to us discriminated against based on sexual orientation. 5.8%, some would view that as a low number, but when you extrapolate that on a total population, that's pretty significant. That's a large number. So that probably is something that you'll work on over time. Here are the numbers. Race, 2.4, 2.8, ethnicity, 1.2, gender, 0.4, age, nothing on sexual orientation and disability. And some at 1.8 were unsure. Moving to communication, we had 2.4% told us that they needed translation support. 83.3% told us that the amount of time the translator spent with them was about the right amount of time. So the other options were too little time, too much time. And then 91.7% of those that actually used that translation service, was 2.4%, said that they understood the translator either very well or somewhat well. So a positive rating for the translation course. Nearly two-thirds, 62.5%, received notices from the court related to their most recent experience. The average overall positive rating for characteristics of the notice was actually 92%. So of that 65% that received notices, they rated the notices on a number of characteristics at 92% positive. So notices get a pretty good review here. Understandable, 92.9. Arriving on time, 92.2. Informative, 90.9. The average being 92. Moving to the website. 23%. Remember, in Connecticut and nationally, we have about 75% of the population have access to the internet. So you have a base of 23.7% that actually have used you've gone to and visited your website. The average overall positive rating on the characteristics we measured for the website, which are these, was 79.9%. So needs some work. You know, the website is something that you'll take this information back to your IT folks and say, there's some areas, there's some concern. We're getting fair rather than really good ratings on maneuverability, getting around the website. So can you take a look at that for us and look at ways to make it more informative or more appealing? So not a bad rating, but this would be an indication that it needs a little bit of work. The most frequently named sources for information about Connecticut courts appear to be the internet at 25%, newspapers at 14%, and the courts themselves, directly from you, 29.5%. Because we asked in an open-end format question, where do you generally go to get information about the court system? In the juror section, jurors alone were asked to rate the court on 6 different characteristics. The average overall positive rating was 86.9% on those 6. The highest positive ratings were recorded for overall treatment by the judge, 90.6, timely entrance into the building, 93.8. The lowest positive rating was recorded for parking at 71.4%. And here they are. In the middle of all that was comfort of rooms, very good at 85.9. Wait time in lines, 83.3. Overall treatment, we already covered that, overall treatment. So. And that brings us to the end of the survey. I have a couple more quick things that I'd like to do with you. Now, I think some of you remember that we worked with you back in 1998 on the Public Trust and Confidence Survey. I remembered that well, and then I saw these results, and I think I commented that I was actually pretty surprised, because we do have clients that the more contact their customers or their clients or the folks they deal with have with them, the lower their ratings go. There are organizations out there that the more contact they have with their customers, the lower their ratings go. So this appears, based on our previous work with you, that the opposite is true. It looks like, because these were some high ratings here in many areas, were a bit of a surprise for our staff. So it just appears that the more people get to know you, the higher the ratings they provide to such folks as us when we call them and ask them about it. So that's a good thing. What I'm going to pass around now are a couple things. I won't go through it in detail, but I want you to know what's there and how useful this information can be. The first set of information, and I'll get this started going around. The first set of information is called key driver analysis. And this, I think one of our obligations to you is to tell you if people are upset with you, why they are upset with you. And this research, I think, will begin the process of giving you an indication or giving you the answers to those questions through what is known as predictive analysis or key driver analysis. If you look at the first page, actually the first 4 pages, what I did is I shaded some areas. On the composite column is the overall result that you just saw. Those are the results of the 500 sample survey. Then you look, wait just a moment. There are others, though, that are called the grumpy pants analysis. Okay. The first 4 pages here. On the left-hand side are some key core questions derived from the survey. What we did is we took a look at the folks responding to the expectations question, the satisfaction question, and then if you flip in 3 pages to the discrimination question. And what we said in the 1, 2, 3, 4th column in, to give you an example, is those that said their expectations of the court are either seldom or never met. We asked the computer to tell us what the rating of the court system was on treating you fairly, and their rating was 34.2% compared to the composite of the 500 sample at 79.9%. That then is the largest spread. So you begin to get a picture of why those that provided ratings of expectations poorly, why they're upset, and being treated fairly was one of them. The next one is being open and honest. So what we did is we actually shaded anything above 35. And you look at across the way there to satisfaction. Very satisfied, somewhat satisfied, somewhat dissatisfied, not all satisfied. So the cumulative total were those that are in that column titled Question 30, dissatisfaction overall. They were at 32.6 compared to composite on treating you fairly. We also shaded that because that was above 35. So it's just something to look through. It tells you the greatest area, the spread column to show you the greatest area. If you go in 5 pages, we did some cross calculations where we looked at 4 questions again based on age, education levels, income, gender. And you start to see some differences on that first cross calculation table. For example, met your expectations seldom or never. Older folks at 26% to 16% for younger. Education on being open and honest, 88 for postgraduate, 76% for high school. Dropping down to very or somewhat satisfied with recent court experience, older, 72 to 81. So you begin to see some differences based on demographics. The last page, if you quickly glance at that, what we did is, I know these samples are small, but we still took the 8 different codes and the 8 different case sites, and we shaded one that shows you in declining order who your happiest customers are, or users are, down to the least. And it appears your jurors are your happiest folks at 93.3% compared to a composite at 81.8%, all the way down to civil at 68.6%. And if you look at the net expectations column, it's in declining order except for housing, where housing is 65 and gets bumped up just under jurors then. So it's a couple different ways to analyze the data, look at it, and provide some answers for you. We are leaving behind copies, just a few copies today of the report. I'll be sending along electronically to Melissa the report. We have the data, the raw data. If you choose to look through the data, Melissa has a copy, plus we can send that to you in Word readable format as well if you want it on your computer. But over time, as you develop some questions and you work in your committees and subgroups, you may ask us to do, can you run this report, the whole report on emails, or one ethnicity, or one race? There's so much that we can do with this as you get into these committees and start working. If you want to see something more than we've provided to you today, as long as there's a question or a code, we can have the computer run it for you. So as you break into committees and start doing work, please use the data that is there. It was actually pretty much, I know in Connecticut we're at about 12 statewide, and I know users of the system are a little bit different, but in Connecticut we're about 12% Hispanic, I believe it's about 12% African American. In your data, we were at 16%, a little bit over on African American, and Hispanic was 12.2%. So we're a little bit over statewide data, a little bit over on African American, about right on Hispanic.
Do you have a breakdown of the number of respondents you had for each?
Yes, that's in the report too. Because what we did, that was one of my earlier statements, is that we sat down and came up with some proportion so that it's relatively reflective and proportional to the population that you deal with.
Number 3 was represented by an attorney.
So that's right. On a composite basis, 37% said that they were represented by an attorney. So those earning under $25,000, those 59% earning under $25,000 said that they were represented by an attorney.
That's on the next page. I was anticipating high school, college, young, second page, satisfied income. What percentage of people actually hold their income?
We go in cycles on income, usually ranging from 30% to 50% refusing to answer that. From year to year, all research firms usually get about the same percentage. This year, we're running at about 40%, and your refusal rate on income is 40%. So we're left with the 60 to run with. Yes, sir.
Maybe I misunderstand this, but does this commission or group, whatever, have an interest in knowing what some of the attitudes are of the public at large, as opposed to people involved with the court system? I guess we're not concerned with that. I mean, is there an interest in knowing, for example, what the general public thinks about how effectively the courts operate, or how fairly the courts operate? This survey was done.
This was only the users. This survey was done. Because the survey had been done less than 10 years ago, which was not restricted to users, it was the public conception. And with the other things we did, we decided this survey we would focus on the user. I was just making sure the jurors were not asked if they were represented by an attorney, so we don't have that issue. Okay.
I have a question regarding the overall satisfaction index here on the last page. The jurors indicated that they have a 93% satisfaction, and civil is at 68.6%. Two questions. One, how is civil defined? And two, does that include jury trial? And if so, why is it so low?
Okay, you may have to help me out here. We're looking at, you're on the last page, code analysis, and you're at question 30, overall satisfaction.
Yes.
For civil,
Yes.
at 68.6%. Okay,
And the question is, how do you define civil? And two, I'm assuming that civil includes civil jury trial. And at the same time, we have a juror satisfaction rate of 93.2%. Is there
civil goal?
I believe what Greg Peck did in terms of providing the data, and John, I think I'm wrong, is went through recent cases in any party that was involved in civil action. And then the difficult part was we didn't want to contact businesses. So went through, and if there was a business, they wanted to contact. Jurors were not pulled under the civil category. They were done separately on the jury. So anyone that had a civil case could have been called, as long as they were not a business.
So these are parties, not business parties.
And we don't have any record of any analysis of whether any of these people were successful or unsuccessful in their ultimate objective in the court.
Or why they felt that, is there a breakdown of why they felt that they were not satisfied in civil?
If what we can do is we can take civil and run them by those three open-ended questions: strengths, weaknesses, and expectations. That'll give you a clue as to why civil folks will have been upset or happy.
Do you have data on, for example, juvenile? You try to take a representative sample for each category on how many were actually able to contact in the sample.
How many we have determined a number of, in each of these categories that we wanted to complete, and we proceeded until we got to that number, yes. What we did is we sat down and said 500, now what proportion will come from civil, what proportion will come from juvenile based on your caseload and your workload. And then we then set out to draw a sample that way and make the calls that way. So if we said, I'm just guessing, but if it was at 14% juvenile, then we 14% of the 500 was juvenile.
One more question. Sure. Can you figure out how long it's going to get your 14%? How many calls you have to make?
Well, I can't do the math in my head. That's 72%. We have 72% completion. Now, if you're asking specifically about juvenile, I'll have to get back to you on that. Because I'd have to look at individual for that. Yes, ma'am.
Is there any plan or possibility of developing data that would allow the business civil litigants to respond? And I only ask that because, based on the focus groups that I've seen, there's a lot of input that's coming in terms of the issues that impact the business entity litigant. Because if that group isn't part of this, then it's pretty much going to fall into different categories of civil litigation. I don't think it's sitting here. Just have that question.
We did not contact any business. This is a residential survey.
So I'm just looking at ways that we might be able to develop.
Would it be feasible to do that? I mean, I think we addressed this through the focus groups, and certainly we did have the public hearings, although we did hear from any businesses that I know. But is that something a survey can do with
corporations will do B2B, their business customers, as much as they'll do their residential customers. Sure.
One number that struck me as kind of curious, maybe I'm misinterpreting this, but under you initiated in the final satisfaction or the final code analysis page, has jurors 98.3%? I think that ought to be zero. And jurors get called, they don't initiate the
They themselves initiated. Yeah, I'll have to check on that. That is a little odd. I think of a reason why. I'll have to check on that.
Sure, so something you said earlier, you can have us determine civil responses over small claims.
Yes. That's actually in the report. So once you get that question will be answered. Any other questions? If not, once again, by emailing Melissa, she'll forward your emails for your questions. I'm taking away 2 so far. I'm checking on that, on the jurors, and I'm checking on juvenile. So if you have any others, just email Melissa. She'll forward them to me, and we'll quickly respond. Thank you.
All right, we're going to move right along in the agenda in hopes that we can not keep everyone too long today. The next item on the agenda is a summary of the public hearing. So you all know, last week we had 2 public hearings, one in Hartford on Monday and one in Bridgeport on Thursday. I would like to thank each of you that were able to attend either or both of those hearings. It was certainly helpful to me to have you there, to know that there were others listening to the comments of our various citizens who came out to be heard on various issues. Just so you know, I'd say we heard from about 20 different people total, perhaps a little more. We had certainly people who have concerns, criticisms, disappointments, distrust with the judicial system. Certainly they've raised some issues for us to consider in our efforts today and looking ahead as we come up with a strategic plan. What we're going to do in terms of those 2 hearings, for those of you who couldn't attend, or for those of you who did attend and would like to pursue pursue particular issues further, we're getting expedited transcripts that will be available to anyone who wants them on the commission. We have all of the written submissions, whether they were actually submitted when the person testified or whether they were submitted in lieu of testimony. We have those in a binder, and they're certainly available. These, as I'll say in a bit, when we form our committee, certainly the information we gathered in the public hearings as well as the information Jerry has provided us through the survey will be considered along with the tremendous amount of information we've gotten from our focus groups. So I'm just letting you know that we have a great deal of information. Instead of sending out a lot of that to you individually from the public hearings, we're just going to have it centralized at Melissa's office, and you certainly are urged to either stop by or get a copy from her if you would like one. Any questions about the public hearings? Okay. All right. The next item on the agenda is a review of the results of the focus groups. I'm going to ask Joe D'Alessio to report on that.
About 87 focus groups were identified as potentially to be conducted. So far, we've conducted 80 of them, and those included about 1,000 people. And before I say anything else, I'd just like to recognize a few individuals who played a major role in either setting up focus groups or serving as facilitators, and they are Judge DiPentima, Justice Katz, Judge Quinn, Judge Carroll, Judge Vince, Fred Urey, Dawn Westbrook, Melissa Farley, Vic Nichols, Alice Mastroni, Shona Johnson, and Steve Marhesky. We still have about 7 or 8 focus groups to conduct, and they include domestic violence advocacy groups. I think we've been in contact with Lisa Holden to work with her to set those up. We've been in contact with elderly advocacy groups, and that meeting is being set up. We're trying to contact various neighborhood revitalization zone groups, including housing authorities, church groups, and anti-poverty groups. Court Ops is setting up a focus group for court officers who serve in the complex litigation courts. The Judicial Branch Criminal Task Force is in the process of being reconstituted, and when that's completed, we'll have a focus group with them. Judge DiPentima will be meeting with the Judges Association, and finally, we're trying to get on the agenda for the Connecticut Chief of Police Association monthly meeting and conduct a focus group with them. But also, we've been in contact with Kevin Kane about conducting a focus group with GA Supervising Assistant State's Attorneys. And I think Judge DiPentima's feeling is that if anybody has an interest conducting a focus group with another group, just contact her. We'll be more than happy to set it up, because this is an ongoing process.
You know, I think I urge you to think about, for instance, Mary, I think you were bringing up the business. If there is some group of businesses that you think we might be able to learn something from or are interested in giving input, that's fine. Obviously, sooner rather than later, because we're reaching different points in our strategic plan development, but it's not too late to continue this process. And I'm assuming most of you, if not all of you, participated in a focus group, and you know what an extraordinary job Joe did in getting these working so effectively and efficiently, and frankly, I can't even begin to thank you for your extraordinary effort, and really successful when you all see the amount of really, it's not just stuff that's piled up, it's really important information that we've gathered from these focus groups, and that has been organized in a way that is really, I think, going to make our job much more, much easier and much more frankly productive. Anything else on the focus groups? Any questions about the focus groups?
So is there a written summary or summary of?
I'm sorry?
Is there a written summary or conclusions of that?
Yes. Well, I should say kind of. Because if you think about how many groups there were, and how many of those yellow stickies there were, and how many of those orange stickies there were, it's not fair to say there's a nice, neat summary for all of us to have on all focus groups. But we are going to, in fact, that's a great segue. I could have used you as a thank you. So we'll go right into the next item on the agenda. And that is, now that we have all of this information from all of these focus groups, and again, I'm saying that, and really, obviously, the bulk of the focus groups have been completed, but we can still gather information that can be used as we continue our task if others' focus groups will be held. But we spent a day organizing after Joe and his staff had done a lot of organization. We spent a day organizing a considerable amount of information from all of these focus groups. And what we did, we had about 800 trends from these groups that we had up on a wall, that we identified, meaning these focus groups identified. And what happened was that we then grouped these 800 trends into 28 categories. And then we grouped those 28 categories into 12 categories. And then, miraculously, it came to 5. And this was all within 9 hours, actually. It was a remarkable day, but somehow it seems to have made sense to me, which is, I wasn't sure about 3 months ago, but I'm sure now. What we came out with were these 5 categories, these 5 areas, and those 5 categories are going to be our committees that I've been warning you about, that this is where the work begins. And that's what I think you've all got handed out to you, and I'm just going to go through each of these 5 categories and explain to you that in that 800 to 5 category, we did not lose anything. All of the supporting material behind these 5 areas is going to be provided to each committee. So there is a lot to work with here. And because there's so much to work with, the steering committee, with the able and wonderful assistance of Pat Carroll and Joette Katz, came up with summaries and what we call highlights that we're going to ask each of the committees to consider as they reach for coming up with the outcome goals and the strategies that will form our strategic plan. So unless there are any questions so far about where we are, I'm going to just quickly go through these, because what I want you to do, if possible today, but certainly no later than Friday, is to give us your top 2 choices of what committee you'd like to serve on. And what's going to happen over the next 2 months, not really December, we're planning on a lot of committee work in January and February, and then our next full commission meeting won't be until March, because it's going to be what the committees came up with. Information. The outcome, goal, and supporting strategies will ensure that every person shall be afforded equal and unobstructed access to all aspects of the court process so that they may receive a fair, timely, open, and efficient resolution of any matter brought before the court. Particular emphasis should be placed on reestablishing public confidence in the judicial system by identifying and developing strategies to remove barriers encountered by the court's primary users, the public, the bar, pro se litigants, victims, and media. The outcome goal and strategies will include, and I ask you as you work on your committee, this means we looked at all the focus groups, and these are the points that are particularly important to those folks that came out for the focus groups. Physical deficiencies and effective utilization of judicial branch facilities, the application of technology, methods of communication, knowledge and sensitivity of judges and judicial branch staff, availability of court information, personal rights and privacy. The committee should, at minimum, develop strategies to remove barriers encountered by non-English speakers and individuals with physical and psychological disabilities, and strategies to ensure open access to court information while protecting the right of privacy of individuals. And I just will add a couple of things to the Access Committee that came up during these focus groups. Greater demand of infrastructure to meet growing needs, aging and non-compliant facilities, notwithstanding what we just heard from the survey results. This is a common theme. Increasingly inadequate and aging facilities, better accommodations for attorneys. We have increased demand by non-English speaking customers and a growing lack of sensitivity to non-English speaking population, increased need for training on rights and needs of people with disabilities. We have a growing tension between the right to know and right to privacy because we have an increased demand for access to information and the conflict between openness versus privacy, the increased scrutiny and reach of the media, the increased oversight, scrutiny, and accountability with regard to the branch, and the growing impact of media on the judicial process. These are some of the issues that came up. I invite the steering committee and Justice Katz and Judge Carroll to add anything on this issue if I have been a little too cryptic. And are there any questions from anyone else on what this committee is asked to look into? The Committee on Accountability is focusing on accountability, and significantly many of the trends fell into this category. The outcome goal in this and strategy in this committee should be concerned with ways to secure the fair adjudication of cases by impartial and knowledgeable judges who are able to decide these cases on the facts and the law, free from outside pressures and special interests, and to maintain a fair and to maintain an open and efficient process. The outcome goal and strategy should include, but not be limited to, exploring ways to reinforce the public and the other branches of government, the judiciaries, and in particular the judges' pivotal role in the process under the rule of law and our Constitution. That is reinforcing the judiciary's role. Explore methods to improve courtroom decorum, explore more effective ways to provide accurate information to the public regarding judicial decision-making, processes, and responsibilities, examine the current evaluation for judges and explore their options to provide feedback, re-examine the allocation and assignment of judges and the possibility of specialization. That issue came up quite frequently. Explore ways to ensure that court users, i.e. litigants, jurors, victims, attorneys, and witnesses, are treated with dignity and respect throughout the state. Some of the highlighted trends were the growing tension between victims' rights and defendants' rights, the increase in post-conviction litigation, the increasing number of habeas cases. We heard about this in Bridgeport at the public hearing as well. The need for better utilization of staff, balancing the increasing security demands with respect for the individual, increased difficulty in balancing security needs with courtesy and efficiency, the increasing specialization of the bar without specialization of the bench, growing inefficiency in case management, increasing need for psychological, social, available services, and legal training for judges, greater demand for professionalism and courtesy, growing separation between the bar and the bench, demand for greater professionalism from the bench, the bar, and staff, ongoing threats to judicial independence, increased oversight and scrutiny of the judicial branch, increasing concern over judicial independence versus other branches of government, greater demand for increased judicial accountability pertaining to punishment of defendants, public demand for tougher sentences and longer incarceration, and the shifting emphasis to put punishment over rehabilitation, and the growing imbalance of power between prosecution and defense, the growing demand for harsher treatment of criminal defendants both pre-trial and post-conviction. These were some of the issues that came up from all sorts of different focus groups. Anybody want to add anything to that? Any questions? Yes.
As I'm listening, I'm getting a little confused on if someone were serving the committee, what the charge would be. In other words, there are many, many good thoughts in there, and many ways one can attack this. I'm not hearing, and maybe it's the charge of the committee to figure out these questions, what the goals of the committee would be. So, for example, one could have as goals to increase the satisfaction of those who are involved in cases. One could have as a goal to reduce the backlog in the system, to reduce the average throughput time for a case, and on and on and on. Is the thought that one of the charges of each committee will be to develop those goals and simultaneously develop measurements to judge success in meeting those goals, and to develop operational implementation steps to achieve those goals? I'm a little confused at where the general direction stops and where the charge of each committee begins.
The charge of each committee is going to be the same, which is to come up with an outcome goal and strategies to meet that goal. The challenge of the committee, and it's a considerable challenge, is deciding based on the information, and that's why, as I said, this one-page summary has given some framework for that outcome goal for each committee, will be to decide which goal is frankly reasonable at this point and measurable and fits in with all of these values that we're discerning. There's going to be, I should have said, what we're going to do in December is meet with the co-chairs who will be named within a week or so on each committee and help figure out exactly how the charge will be framed. But yes, we won't be going in and talking about all these things willy-nilly. Any other questions? And feel free to talk to Joe and to Melissa and to Doug and any of the other members of the steering committee about this. If you have any other questions, Fred Urey, John Westbrook, as well. I'm not going to, you've all read the sheet. I feel as though I'm reading unnecessarily. So unless there are any questions on the summary, I'm just going to suggest that you, for instance, on the Committee on Changing Demographics, I'll give you a few other issues, but you can see here, we've laid out each summary in similar format and asked the committee to study this as we've set forth. But as to the Committee on Changing Demographics, in addition to what you see on that front page, I just will alert you to the fact that the kind of the highlights of the trends identified in these focus groups were the impact of the growth on growth of juvenile population, the increase in mentally ill population without any increase in services or facilities, the impact of changing socioeconomic trends on the judicial branch, which would include increased pressure on courts to solve social ills, and the movement towards accountability through measuring outcomes, the increased awareness of an impact of cultural and social trends, and the need for increased focus on legal needs of a diverse population. So I think this committee is as you can see, got some particular challenges in terms of the changes in the population. Any questions on this committee? I'll do the same thing on the Committee on Collaboration. That is basically, as you can see, to enhance the communications and cooperations among the branches, within the judicial branch, and between the agencies of the state government to better serve the public. And in particular, we, in addition to what is stated in terms of what is stated on that single page, I draw your attention to such issues as the impact of organizational culture on effectiveness and efficiency, the increasing demand for sharing information between branches of government, and that came up in several different forms: increase in informational sharing, more competition for limited funding and resources. So we have the need to share information as well as the problem of the scarcity of resources to be shared among different branches and different agencies and different parts of our own judicial branch. The last, any questions on that? The last committee to be discussed is that on the delivery of legal, I always want to say the delivery of legal services, the delivery of services. And again, I'm not going to read that single page that you have. This does have to include, does have to include the rising number of pro se litigants and their particular demands and needs, as well as our concern about the juror experience, among other issues. Also, in this committee, you've got to deal with the ADR issue, a growing emphasis on alternatives to the traditional court process. And in terms of the juror, why we're getting reluctance for jurors to serve, how can we deal with that? Also, the growing demand for specialty courts, that was another issue that came up. The growing concern for the cost of legal services, the increased expense and complexity of litigation, and the greater demand for information delivered electronically, as well as the demand for the use of the internet, and then the greater focus on safeguarding information. The other aspect of this committee will be case management. How better can we be assigning judges, preserving job satisfaction, allocating resources more effectively? Need for streamlining the court process, more diverse specialized services. We have a change in our family dockets. We have a declining number of jury trials. We have apparently a growing ineffectiveness of pretrials, according to some in the focus groups. Inconsistent policies and practices or procedures among courthouses, the lack of efficient and uniform case management, the need for greater uniformity and efficiency in pretrial discovery practice. Those are the 5 areas. Those are the 5 committees that we've identified. And as Attorney Stillman has suggested, the charges are not crystal clear in these papers, but we did not want them to be crystal clear at this point. We want each committee to be able to consider what outcome goal makes the most sense for the judicial branch at this time with these considerations that we've set out. What we're going to do is in December...
I'm sorry,
yeah.
interrupted. Is each committee only going to be able to describe one outcome goal?
Well, certainly you can describe a number of outcome goals, but you've got to decide on one outcome goal for now. But for each outcome goal, you're going to have quite a few strategies to reach that outcome goal. We're not, I mean, think small, act large. We've got a huge task in front of us. We're not going to make huge steps and fall flat on our faces initially. We are going to consider what is realistic. And one outcome goal for this strategic plan per committee is what we're aiming for.
But that means making some choices, and I'm just looking at this last one. I mean, sort of some concerns about litigants and concerns about jurors are really quite different. What you're saying is that committee's going to decide that one or the other is more important.
I think that may not be so. I think your outcome goal needs to be framed in a way that covers something perhaps a little grander than just one of those issues that can perhaps cover those. Okay? Yes?
Who's going to be putting the committees together?
Well, you're going to tell me.
I know we're
Yeah.
going to put our preferences. Who's going to who's going to choose this?
Oh, I'm going to
And is there going to be a balance? I mean, between attorneys, judges?
We're not putting all the judges in one committee. I think that's, I won't say no, but I won't say absolutely because of the timeline. I think that there's no reason not to have people,
I think it's a question.
Tony asked if there were going to be people outside the commission that's looking on these committees, and I did not foreclose that possibility.
So each committee will have support staff too. They'll be trained and be working with the co-chairs of the committee, doing all the logistical work for copying over the next few minutes and things like that.
Yes, I should have said that, by the way. Yes.
What's the expectation of the commission members to serve on more than one committee, or?
No. One committee. Not unless you're superman. Yes, you're going to choose to, you're going to be appointed to one committee. The balance, I'm going to do my darndest to have a good balance. The co-chairs are going to be very difficult to select, but we're going to do that. And Joe's right, I should have, not only will there be training for the co-chairs in December or early January, but then for the committee members, the support staff will be there for each meeting, but will also help train the committee certainly at the initial meeting.
How many people per committee?
Probably this is not when I'm taking resignations. You are going to have support. So then we expect that you'll meet in January, in February, in March, and then we'll meet as a commission back in March with your outcome goals and strategies. I don't want to go into all the details, but I'd be happy to go into more details if people want. It's just that it's a lot to absorb. And Doug has to leave right quick. So we're continuing this process. As I said, we're going to get more information because there probably will be more focus groups. There will be people who want us to hear what they have to say. Those things will be incorporated into the respective committees. And I think there are going to be ideas and plans that we are going to be able to implement immediately that aren't going to require developing a strategic plan. And in fact, we've already done something. We put on the internet a survey, a quick satisfaction survey. But there are other things that I think everyone would agree you don't need to wait for the end of the spring or however long it'll take to implement this plan. After these committees get going and provide some feedback, we are going to also form that vision, mission, and values committee, and that obviously we need the input from the other committees to work with. So this is, I won't, as you can probably tell, this is not something I have a great deal of experience in, but as I have come through these last few months, I'm feeling as though this is we are really doing something that can help the judicial branch. The process has been most edifying for at least, I think, those around this table, if not more, just hearing what people's perceptions are, what their ideas are, what concerns they have. But if we can actually put into this strategic plan a way to deal with issues before they come up and hit us, I think and it doesn't have to be for every problem facing the judicial branch, but those we feel that are most important for us to deal with right now, that we can deal with right now, I think we'll be doing a lot for justice and Connecticut. Yes?
I apologize, I just want to make sure that I understand the path that we're going to go down. So am I hearing you say that these 5 committees that we're going to form are really going to look for some quick hits that can be activated very quickly, and that we're then going to do vision, mission, values kinds of things to create a longer-term strategic plan for the branch?
I would differ with you on quick hits, because I think it may be some will be quicker hits than others, but it's really what is most immediate and something we actually can do is what I'm going to ask. So it's not quite quick hits, but yes, we are going to be looking to the future, looking to, okay, the plan's got to change in 6 months or a year. We understand it's a dynamic process, which is not to say that you have to stay on this commission for years and years and years. We just need to get this up and going in a format that can be worked on year after year. Yes?
Just a question on as far as the public hearings. Why are you not disseminating the information to the entire group? I mean, some of the allegations there were serious as far as judges committing felonies and things. And why isn't it being distributed?
Kennedy, right?
Yes.
Kennedy, this is not a public hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And I appreciate that you're here, but as I said, all of that information is going to be available to the commission, as I said. But okay, any other questions? So I would urge the commission members to spend a few minutes, if you can, and see if you can if you can't make a decision about the committee you want to serve on today, please do so by Friday so that we can.
So what do we do with our election?
You give them to Melissa or Joe or me or that's it. Okay? All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Thank you very much. Oh, I just want to say one thing. Congratulations to Judge Peter.
Thank you.